Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Med School Minutes podcast, where we discuss what it takes to attend and successfully complete a medical program. This show is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. Here is your host, Kaushik Guha.
Welcome to another episode of Med School Minutes, where we talk about everything MD with the focus on international graduates. Today I have two very interesting guests, and we will be talking about what is accreditation. This is coming on the heels of our second episode where we talked about what the ECFMG Accreditation 2024 rule means. So we really wanted to shed a little bit more light on what exactly it means to be accredited, what is accreditation, and how does that really affect the student, the staff, the faculty, and all the stakeholders associated with med school. So today, as my guest, we have Dr. Kaushik Guha, who is the founder of St. James School of Medicine. We also have Dr. Jose Ramirez, who is the assistant dean based out of Chicago. So we've got a lot to cover here today. So without further ado, Dr. Guha, welcome to the show. And one quick question for you is that you founded St. James in 1999.
That's right.
Given the regulatory environment today, as it stands with the accreditation rule in 2024 by ECFMG, etc., would you start a medical school today?
Well, today, if I could mobilize the same energy and same power to work, I have. Since the time I started, it is now about nearly 22 years. So if I was 22 years younger, yes, I would.
But aren't there huge regulatory issues? Like if a school were to start today, there's no way they would possibly be accredited or be able to produce enough doctors to even take the USMLE based on our ECFMG 2024 rule.
Well, in many ways, everything in the world has its good part and the bad part. Whereas because of the change over the last 22 years, this change has brought about certain difficulty, but it has made certain things very easy also. So all in all, I think that if you considering from all points of view, if you see how easy or difficult, what were the things that were easy at that time and what were the things that was difficult at that time, and you compare it now, then I would say that St. James would be, in many ways, easier to start now than before.
Why do you say that? What would be easier?
Okay, for example, based on the personal experience, I can tell you that I started my career in a offshore medical school, Ross University, for example. And Ross University started in the late 70s it started. And I joined in 81, so about 2-3 years after. And what I saw, the condition of how difficult it was for the students being a Ross University student, that means an offshore medical school student, the way they were treated in the island where the school was, the way they were treated in the U.S., how the condition or the formalities that they had to go through to get a rotation and then to get a residency was incomparably more difficult than it is now. So, and then to say nothing about how the staff and the students were treated in the island where the school was. So when you consider those things, I would say it is much more, the offshore medical schools are much more accepted now. They are better known now. The hospitals are more open to accepting the students of these schools. It is so much easier for the schools to participate in the students' loan program. it is significantly easier to get faculty members, qualified faculty members, to work in this kind of schools. So all in all, I would say things are not more difficult, but it is easier now than it was before.
Right. But how about the aspect that when you started in 1999, you didn't need any accreditation. But now you cannot, even moving forward 2 years, it's practically impossible to start a new school without any sort of accreditation moving forward.
Well,
So the regulatory environment has definitely changed, and it's become a lot more restrictive. And so do you still think that starting a school today would be easier than starting a school in 1999?
Let's say if you compare it in absolute terms, it's difficult to say. But as I said before, that yes, you will need more resources today to start a school because checks and balances are in place. And when you start a school, the host island or host country will look at several parameters, that do you have this, do you have that, etc., etc. And if you have all these, only then you can start. And these considerations are put in place in the interest of the students. So therefore, out of that consideration, the restrictions have been introduced. And I think that these restrictions should be there anyway. And so now the restrictions are there. So someone who is starting a school, they may need more resources in the sense they should have more money for investment. They should have a better faculty. They should have better facilities, etc., etc., which is necessary. But before you didn't have that. Before you could just rent a garage and put some chairs and tables and start a medical school. But that is not the way school should be starting. And nobody was satisfied. The students were not satisfied. The government was not satisfied. Even the school owners were not satisfied because of that. And all the time, when that kind of school were popping up like mushrooms, there were a lot of difficulties. And it was very difficult for students really to pick and choose. And they were very insecure. They were all the time feeling very insecure about their future. I distinctly remember an experience that when a team from New York Accreditation, they visited Ross University. And since there was no restrictions at all of a sudden the New York Accreditation board came in for a site visit. And they asked a student that, look, you have invested so much money, you don't know whether you will be able to get into residency, etc., etc. If you find that you are not able to get into residency, what will you do? And in front of all of us, the students coolly said, I will have no other choice but to commit suicide. All right? Now, that sort of thing cannot happen now. And it was not a good experience for the faculty, not a good experience from the members of the accreditation, or for anybody. That sort of things cannot happen in this kind of a situation. So in a way, it is, the investors and those who are starting a school, they may feel that, it's so difficult to start a school, but it is actually in the interest of the students. Yeah. Before you could, someone who has absolutely no experience whatsoever about teaching, etc., etc., there were some, motor mechanics. Because they have accumulated some money, they would rent a few rooms in a garage and they would start a medical school. Of course, they are not viable, they didn't survive, but that could happen. And they got student. And there are few schools in the Caribbean region, even now, that this is the way they're operating. And I think those schools should, I think checks and balances should be there in order to restrict that kind of schools. So in a way, it is very difficult to really say that, yes, it is easier now than before. But it may be, it is more difficult now than before. But in a way, it may be difficult, but it is more, how to say,
Organized?
more better organized. There are better checks and balance, and it is in all these things are happening in the interest of the student. And these checks and balances, etc., are necessary, and it is in the interest of the student and the school, both.
Okay. So, Dr. Ramirez, you welcome to the show as well. You have been a part of St. James for more than 5 years now.
Yes, for more than 5 years.
And your credentials are very stellar. I believe you have a practicing license in the European Union, Venezuela, and Anguilla.
And Montserrat.
And Montserrat as well.
Yeah.
And you have been the chief surgeon, I believe, at
I was
Anguilla?
working, yes, in the surgical service, for several years now. Well, in fact, I think my first experience with St. James was in 2013. The first time I went to Anguilla.
Oh, wow. So it's almost pushing like 9 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a huge variety of experience with dealing with patients and students from different countries. So in your mind, I know we just heard Dr. Guha talk about the importance of being accredited and, these checks and balances. What's your view on it? Is it just cumbersome? Is it necessary? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your take on this?
Well, first we need to see the difference between a Caribbean school that's in the way to be accredited, an American school, and the rest of the world.
Okay.
All right. So we're talking about these in the Caribbean. We have countries that are really small. They don't have enough population, so they don't have the political power to have their own accrediting bodies. All right. Like difference in South America or Europe, that the same country is the one that is going to do the accreditation for their own schools. All right.
Okay.
So in that case, my case, Venezuela, the Ministry of Education will go through accreditation by themselves. They will accredit the med schools, all right? In Europe, basically it's the same. You have double system, public and private med schools. In this case, it's necessary. Why? Because we need to fulfill a minimum of requirements for the education of the future doctors. As Dr. Guha well said, you can't put a garage with 4 chairs and call that a med school. Okay, you can have the best of intentions, but it's not reality in this world. All right, because we own the best for the people who is putting their trust into any med school. Okay, we don't want them to fail. We want them to become doctors, physicians. That's the main goal. So I feel like accreditation is paramount in this modern world, in modern medicine, that will help schools and students to have all the requirements of the law to become physicians.
Okay. So you must have come across students over your career who are not from accredited schools. Have you at all?
No.
In your dealings? So, well, that's a really good sign because it seems like in the Caribbean, nearly 50% of the schools are not accredited. But the fact that in your career you've come across students who are only from accredited schools really speaks volumes about how, this was potentially the Wild West back in the day, where people, as Dr. Guha pointed out, you could start a school in the garage. To today, where you're seeing as part of an organized institution, are seeing mostly accredited schools going through your ranks, which is a big deal. How would you imagine students from unaccredited schools deal? So, long story short is, why would a school, because it costs a ton of money to get accredited, it's an administrative burden. Why would a school go through this?
It's not that they need, it's a must. It's a must because they own this to their students. Okay? I understand there is a certain portion of the medical education that need finances. I understand this. But it's academics is above everything else. So in this case, accreditation will help these students to fulfill the requirements to get an international medical graduate license in the United States, through the ECFMG, and it's a requirement that you're looking for quality.
Okay.
All right. So you're looking for this person that is already a doctor that went through a med school that has all the requirements, has the required quality, the right resources, everything. They have the right professors, the right administration, the right island, even the island. All right. So all of these is important to have this a special person that is becoming a doctor or is already a doctor. Okay, and when I'm saying the island, because I think that the governments of the island, they need to work with you, all right? Because you're bringing business to the island, okay? And you're helping the economy of the island as well, all right? There is certain islands that are really not that helpful with some of the medical schools around. I think that you talked before about there is only 25
give or take, yeah.
Yeah, medical schools in the Caribbean that have accreditation. So we're talking about just a little group of a specific school, and that's amazing. Okay. And I'm so glad I'm working here.
Okay.
And we are accredited.
Okay.
you know? But yes, what I will say to a student right now or a medical student right now is you need to be in an accredited school because otherwise you're going to lose your time and money.
Okay. So, Dr. Guha, question to you. Being from the perspective of an owner, what's the advantage of being the owner of an unaccredited school now?
Well, I don't know about the advantage of being...
But why would anyone do that? Why would anyone still be unaccredited and still take new students for this year? When, there's no chance of them potentially being accredited. They have no open accreditation applications, but there are tons of schools doing this in the Caribbean.
Well, obviously, it is they are doing it as a business. That's it. They want to earn money. They could just as well have been selling something else in the street, but instead they find it is more lucrative. That's why they are doing it. But I think I want to get back to your question about is accreditation necessary?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a very important question. Look, whether like it or not, the fact is this institution, that means our kind of medical school, they are training people who will end up being responsible for human life. All right? So it is different from any other profession that they may be dealing with finance, maybe dealing with machines, etc., etc. So if they make a mistake, doesn't really matter. But in this kind of profession, if somebody makes a mistake, it is a human life is involved in there. So therefore, what should be the nature of the training in an institution where you are turning out people who will be responsible for human life? And that knowledge, that how to train this kind of individuals, is not easy. I can tell you that I have been to countries, I have visited medical schools in sovereign countries, and I saw what I saw there. They are turning out training physicians, and their structure, their infrastructure, well, of course, I didn't get very much of opportunity to see what is the nature, what is the content of the training, but they're looking at the infrastructure, looking at the nature of the administration, looking at the environment in which the whole thing is being maintained. I felt that there was a distinct difference between the way we are operating and way they are operating. So the administration of that school, they asked me, how do you like the school? what is your comment? So I told them point blank that, look, what I see here, if our school is operating in the same way as yours, then our accreditation would close it down within 1 month. And they were not very happy about that.
No.
But okay, but you see, in the process of trying to attain this level whereby the institution will reach a certain point where they will really train students, they will be competent and responsible for human life. This experience is not easy to get. And it is very difficult to get a ready-made experience from outside that, okay, here are the experts, come here and you prepare the school and we get accreditation. That it doesn't happen that way. It's a very protracted, it is a very protracted effort, and it needs a lot of experience in running this kind of institution. And little by little, you gain experience through hit and run. And thereby your accumulated experience and wisdom helps you to attain a maturity, and thereby you are finally evaluated and you get accredited and become competent to really train people who will be worthy of human life, taking care of human life. So therefore, without this process of accreditation, it would be impossible to really train individuals who will feel competent and responsible for human life. So therefore, I think it is absolutely essential that the accreditation authorities should be in place. All right. Now, when I visited the other schools that I thought was not comparable to that of ours, that means they were substandard. On the other hand, I do not think the administration in those schools, they are in any way inferior to us. If we have attained a better standard and more competent way of teaching or training our people, it is not because we are any better or any wiser or more talented than anybody else. But the difference is that here we have a system. That means these islands where we are operating, they may not have their own accreditation team or system, but they have found some kind of a authority that is already in place, and they have invited that authority that, okay, you come here and you evaluate this institution, and whatever you determine, we will abide by your decision, and thereby we will hold the medical school administration accountable. That accountability is absolutely essential. In the third world countries mainly, that accountability is simply not there. The administration can do whatever they want, except that is why you see there is a difference in the standard of training in different schools. So if St. James is any better, it is not because the owners, etc., are very talented than anybody else, but the islands actually, islands and also mainly the US and Canada, they have installed a certain system, certain infrastructure, and made the school, forced the school to abide by certain rules and regulations. And these rules and regulations are coming from the accrediting authorities, and that is why we are forced to install, implement, and practice certain way of administration, certain way of training, certain way of teaching, certain way of doing research, etc., etc. That is what differentiates different schools of one kind with that of another. So therefore, in summarizing, we should say these accrediting bodies, they are extremely important, and they're essential. Mainly, they're very important and very essential in order to maintain a certain standard. Without that, I think that it will be a law of the jungle.
So, Dr. Ramirez, a question for you then. I mean, this is kind of an open question to both of you. Is it easy to get accreditation? Can I fly out to, I don't know, Montserrat, rent a garage, put 4 chairs, and can I get accredited today?
You could start a med school like that, but you for 100% sure that you can't get accredited at all, because it's not only the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking here about human resources, like a faculty, the amount of the right faculty, the right administration people, the right resources.
Okay.
It's not that simple. It's like, when you're saying that, I feel like it sounds really simplistic, but it's not. It's really complicated.
Okay.
It takes a lot of hours to do these meetings. Documentation is another type of work. Is crazy. Let me tell you. I've been on the first one with ACCM 3 years ago, and let me tell you, it was a lot of work. A lot of work.
That's what's your take on this, Doctor?
Look,
is it easy to get accreditation?
Well, you see, accreditation is they measure certain parameters. For example, one of the most important parameters for them is passing rate, residency matching rate, and how many students are being enrolled over a certain period of time. So these data, the collection of these data is that takes place as a function of time. So within a year or 2 years, you cannot achieve that. So therefore, even though a given individual or institution may have a lot of resources, they may build a facility made up of white marble stone, etc. But how will they collect the data about matching rate and residency matching rate, USMLE passing rate, their admissions over a period? They can get that kind of a data. So it is very time consuming. It is not just a question of money, but it is also a question of time.
So does that mean with the new 2024 law that we will not see new Caribbean schools anymore, ever? Like whoever is accredited now, they're in the mix?
I don't know what you think, Dr.
No, I don't think so. I think that, let's say, if St. James has to start a brand new school today, that would have been impossible to get accreditation. But if St. James, after 24, if they want to open up another unit in another island, then I think it is possible. Or let us say some other university from another school, a Polish university from Poland, if they want to open up a branch here, like for example, Loyola University has opened up a branch somewhere in the Arab countries. So that sort of arrangement is possible. They can get accreditation. But out of the blue, some investors, just like what any other Caribbean schools did or they are doing now, that someone unknown without any record, because they have some money, they open up a facility in an island ABC and start to recruit students and hope that they will continue with this operation for a certain period of time and make money. That will probably be very difficult after 24.
So that's overall a good thing, right? It means that involuntarily the bad actors or the bad players are going to disappear, hopefully after 2024, unless they're constantly lying to the students. Now, as far as accreditation, standards are concerned, or whether your school is accredited or not, what's the best way for the students to gauge whether the administration is telling the truth? Is there anything you think that the school can do, Dr. Ramirez?
Well, first, they need to inform the students that are accredited, show to which bodies they belong or the accreditation comes from is super important. This is key.
Okay.
If the student can't find, or the administration of that school can say the name of the accrediting body, or say, okay, go to this web page and we are listed there, that's a red flag.
Okay.
That's a red flag because something's not quite right here. I need
Okay.
to know, because one thing is that I have authorization to go to the ACFMG,
Right.
but other thing is going to be from 2024, as you said, this is an accredited school by this specific body from the World Federation of Medical Schools.
Okay. So, what about you, Dr. Wood?
For the students, it is important to find out whether the school is accredited or not. And it may not be for a student, it may not be that easy, but in reality, it is so that those schools that are not accredited, you will find that they, in their website, they will say that, look, we are listed with this agency, that agency, or even we are listed with some business union of the island where they are operating, etc. So those are not really of much, it is not much of a substance. Now, mainly there are, in the Caribbean region, there are two accrediting authorities. One is ACCM, which is based in Ireland. The other one is CAMHP, which is based in Jamaica.
There's also NVAO, right?
No, NVAO is a Dutch one, and this agency, they evaluate the academic standard of schools that are operating only in the Dutch island.
Okay.
They will not go outside the Dutch territory.
Okay.
Now, beyond that, there is another system which was invented a long time ago, and that is in some islands, like in Dominica, as well as in Grenada. In these two islands, the schools that were operating in those islands, they persuaded the government to put together accrediting bodies of their own. But they didn't have, they still don't have the expertise to really evaluate a medical school. So there, the school used their network, the connections, the expertise, the resources, and they put together a accrediting body from the officials of that particular island, and they somehow got that particular body approved by the Department of Education in the U.S. because of their political connection. And this is the only two exceptions that, as far as we know, which is operating beyond the existing ACCM and CAMHP. But by the way, we tried to do the same with other island governments, but those island governments first, they started the operation first, and they found out that it is beyond their scope, and they said, no, we cannot go for any farther than that.
Well, just for a point to note is that I don't know about Dominica, but Grenada has definitely applied for a World Federation of Medical Education recognition, or a WIFME recognition. So in all likelihood, sooner or later, they will probably be at the level of ACCM and CAMHP, if they're already not. But at the time of recording, their application is still awaiting a decision from the WIFME. So there are 3 accrediting bodies across the right now, including the Dutch Caribbean, and there's one that may happen sooner. But do you think that the whole COVID situation, which has affected every part of the world, has affected positively or negatively the accreditation process?
Well, in several cases, we saw that for the accrediting bodies to come to the Caribbean, to the islands, has been basically impossible. It's impossible to travel. There is a way, they had the virtual accreditation or virtual visits to several sites or campuses and hospitals just to check that everything is okay. I think that everything, the same as the date for the 2024, everything got behind 1-2 years. So everybody's behind. Everybody's behind. I feel like we're lucky that, and I think that not even lucky, that we work hard to get them for this year, and they're going to the island, and we're looking forward to have them. And I think that we did an amazing job with with all the documents and everything. It was a really hard work, I can tell. And yeah, I'm really excited. But yes, yeah, at the end, I think COVID put everything in on a waiting list for everybody to get things done on every single level.
Well, one thing I wanted to kind of touch upon a little bit more than what we've talked about so far is that I do recollect that pre-pandemic, remote study and remote learning was not necessarily as widely accepted. Do you think COVID has changed that? I mean, it's definitely affected it in the short run, but in the long run, do you think that will change?
I think I'm not talking about medical schools.
I'm talking about medical schools in general. Like, what do you think?
The difference between, for example, an administration school, I don't know what else, even humanistics careers is different than medicine, because medicine is not only medical facts. Mm-hmm. It's not medical only that. It's the environment, is the communication skills, working as a team. And you're learning that since day one in med school. And it's really difficult, not to say impossible, to get that when everybody is behind a screen at home. And let's face it, there is a lot of people that is not only studying online medicine, but they're also working. Mm-hmm. They're doing their own thing. And let's face it, studying medicine is a job. Yeah. It's a 24/7 job. So for me, this will work for certain electives in medicine and medical school, medical education could work, and I think has been working for a long time. But in general, the student, the person who wants to become a doctor, needs to be involved in daily life in the campus. Okay, not only in the campus, but at the hospitals. So to have virtual education in medicine, I don't see it as the future. Not even nothing. I don't see it as nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Dr. Guha? Do you think that COVID has affected the accreditation process in any way?
Well, it certainly has affected the process in the sense that the accrediting bodies that we work with before pandemic, it was impossible it is unthinkable that they would be accrediting any institution without physical visit. But because of pandemic, they have actually accredited and even extended the accreditation, full accreditation, without physical inspection. They have done it. But this does not mean that pandemic has created a situation where there will be online medicine and some institution will be allowed to operate medical school online and people will admit themselves and get medical degrees online. That is not possible. But what was unthinkable before, that you can get accreditation without physical visit of the accrediting body, that has changed. But on the other hand, what I am referring to is this, that a given school that is already accredited, that particular school, when its previous accreditation is expired and they applied to the accrediting body to come, they couldn't come. So they performed a virtual visit, and on the basis of that, they have granted them full accreditation. But someone who is not accredited at all, they didn't get any accreditation without in-person visit. So in a way, it has changed. But change is limited in the sense that, and probably it will never happen, that a school will be accredited by a given accrediting body without physical visit. That is not. Someone who is accredited, like St. James is accredited, and I guess that if we can interpolate, or what do you call that, extrapolate the experience, then it may happen that some accrediting body may have a virtual visit and then grant or extend the existing accreditation for another term. That's possible. But someone brand new, no accreditation, if they apply, they cannot expect accreditation without in-person visit. So the change is to that extent.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, Dr. Guha, Dr. Ramirez. We really appreciate the insights. To just summarize things, it definitely looks like accreditation is not an easy process that anybody can get. It's a very intense, labor-intensive, time-intensive, and money-intensive aspect that schools need to focus on. It's definitely for the better of the student. And last but not least, the COVID situation definitely has not had any lasting impact on the process of accreditation or the methodology in which information is disseminated to the students. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into Med School Minutes for our third episode, where we talked about what accreditation is all about. Thank you so much. And don't forget, there is no shortcut to becoming a doctor.
Thank you so much for tuning into our show. We hope you enjoyed another episode of Med School Minutes. If you like our content, please follow us and receive notification when a new show is posted. This podcast is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. For a video version of this podcast, please check us out on sjsm.org/video.